Okay, so we ended our last video asking, why is pyruvate important? Why do we even care about pyruvate? Well, it's because there's two pathways for pyruvate at this point. So we take glucose and we go through glycolysis to make pyruvate. And then pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA in normal conditions, in aerobic conditions. So aerobic meaning there is oxygen around. However, in anaerobic conditions, it produces lactate. So you guys might have, we're going to look at it a little more in depth on the next slide, what happens with lactate in our muscles. But you guys might have heard of this, a lactate, a increase of lactate in your muscles, and that makes them sore and everything like that. So this will show you where that comes from. So anaerobic means no oxygen. Aerobic means oxygen. So why this is important is because acetyl-CoA, maybe we'll draw it down here. Acetyl-CoA and the citric acid cycle produces a lot of ATP, whereas lactate only produces some ATP. So at this point, if you take your pyruvate and do an anaerobic conditions, you don't form as much energy, whereas aerobic conditions with the oxygen can produce a lot more energy. And so it's that's the main difference in these processes. So let's look at lactate in muscles. So if you have a lot of strenuous exercise, your oxygen in your muscles is depleted, meaning that you're going to go into anaerobic conditions with the muscles, no oxygen conditions. That means the pyruvate turns into lactate, like we just talked about. Instead of entering the citric acid cycle, it doesn't have the necessary fuel to go into the citric acid cycle. So NAD plus, that coenzyme, is produced and used to oxidize more of the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate used in glycolysis. So instead of getting energy, when you don't have enough oxygen, instead of getting a lot of energy from the citric acid cycle, your muscles just take more sugar and go through glycolysis to get small amounts of energy out, and that ends up producing a lot of lactate. So increased amount of lactate causes muscles to become tired and sore. So why you breathe really heavy after exercise is to kind of repay the oxygen debt and reform pyruvate in the liver. So you're trying to get more oxygen into your system to try and get rid of that lactate. So that's why we see a lot of soreness and everything when you are having a lot of exercise, is because you make lactate through glycolysis and then in anaerobic conditions. Okay, so match the following terms with the descriptions. Let's go through these real quick, remembering and reviewing some of our vocabulary. So please take a moment to do this on your own. And then I'm going to go through the answers now, as you guys know the drill by this point. So this time, I'm going to do it a little bit backwards, but let's see. Let's start with A. What is produced during anaerobic reactions? So if we have no oxygen in our system, we're going to produce lactate. So I'm actually just going to put an A up here to show that that one's anaerobic. Okay, what is the reaction series that converts glucose to pyruvate? That's this whole section we've been talking about. It's called glycolysis. Number C, metabolic reactions that break down large molecules to smaller molecules and energy. Those are going to be a catabolic reaction. Remember, that goes back to our previous sections, catabolic reactions. And then D, substances that remove or add hydrogen atoms in oxidation or reduction reactions. So these are going to be what transfers those hydrogens. Those are our coenzymes that help out this process.